I am Sarah, 52, and I watched my husband destroy our 25-year marriage on a 10-inch iPad screen while sipping a lukewarm latte 2 miles down the road. Before I tell you about the absolute destruction that walked through that front door, let me know where you guys are watching from in the comments. I always love seeing how far these stories travel. It was a Tuesday afternoon. The kind of Tuesday that feels heavy with humidity, typical for late summer here in the Midwest. I was sitting in the corner booth of Bean and Leaf, a little coffee spot just off the main highway leading to Lake Geneva. To the barista, I probably looked like any other middle-aged woman catching up on emails or perhaps reading a digital book. My glasses were perched on my nose, my cardigan was pulled tight against the aggressive air conditioning, and my posture was rigid. But I wasn't reading a book. I was watching a live feed. On my screen, the resolution was crystal clear. It was the living room of my lake house. My grandmother's house. The place where I learned to swim, where I had my first kiss, and where I thought I would retire in peace. Now, it was the stage for a cheap, tawdry soap opera. Richard, my husband of a quarter century, was on the screen. He was wearing that navy blue silk robe I bought him for Christmas 3 years ago. He looked comfortable. Too comfortable. He was swirling a glass of my expensive Cabernet, the vintage bottle I was saving for our anniversary, and laughing. I couldn't hear the laugh through the muted audio, but I knew it. It was his sales laugh. The one he used when he was closing a deal or charming a waitress. And then she walked into the frame. Jessica. My stomach didn't just drop, it felt like it turned inside out. It's one thing to suspect your husband is stepping out on you. It is an entirely different kind of hell to see him with your own half-sister. Jessica is 32. 20 years younger than me. She was wearing one of my oversized t-shirts, her hair messy in that way she thinks is cute but just looks chaotic to me. She flopped onto the beige sofa, the one I had reupholstered last spring, and kicked her feet up on the coffee table. No coaster. Of course. I watched Richard lean down and kiss her forehead. It wasn't a passionate, movie star kiss. It was domestic. It was familiar. That hurt more than anything else. They looked like they belonged there. Like it was their house. Their life. I checked my watch. 1:58 p.m. You're early, I whispered to the screen. I took a sip of my coffee, but I couldn't taste it. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic rhythm that threatened to make my hands shake. I clasped them together on the table to steady myself. I am a forensic accountant. I deal in facts, in numbers, in hard evidence. I do not deal in panic. I had to keep telling myself that. Stick to the plan, Sarah. Stick to the timeline. On the screen, Richard was pouring more wine. He looked confident. Why wouldn't he be? He told me he was at a regional sales conference in Chicago. He told me his phone would be off during the seminars. He thought he was untouchable. He thought I was just the quiet, boring wife who stayed home and filed tax returns. He forgot that my job is literally finding things people try to hide. I glanced out the window of the coffee shop. The road outside was busy with tourists heading to the water, pulling boats, and jet skis. But I was looking for one specific vehicle. And then I saw it on the screen first. A white Ford F-150 pulled into the driveway of the lake house. On the side door, in bold, no-nonsense blue lettering, it read, Eagle Eye Appraisals. David. My breath caught in my throat. David is Jessica's husband. A good man. A man who works 60-hour weeks inspecting foundations and measuring square footage to pay for Jessica's lifestyle needs. He is serious, unironic, and punctual to a fault. I had called him yesterday. I told him I needed an urgent insurance appraisal for the lake property. I told him I was refinancing and the bank needed it done today. I offered him triple his usual fee for the rush job. I told him the door code. I did not tell him that his wife and my husband were currently inside playing house. On the iPad, I saw Richard freeze. He had heard the gravel crunch under the tires. He looked toward the window, confusion washing over his face. He said something to Jessica. She laughed, probably thinking it was the pizza delivery or a lost tourist. Then the doorbell rang. I watched David walk up the porch steps on the exterior camera. He was holding his clipboard and his laser measuring tool. He looked tired but professional. He adjusted his polo shirt, took a deep breath, and rang the bell again. Inside, the panic set in. Richard put the wine glass down so hard I thought it would shatter. He tightened his robe. Jessica sat up, pulling the t-shirt down over her knees, looking suddenly very young and very guilty. This was it. The collision of two worlds. I sat back in the booth, the vinyl squeaking slightly under me. I didn't look away. I couldn't. I had spent 25 years building a life with that man on the screen. I had spent 10 years cleaning up Jessica's messes. Today, I was done cleaning. Today, I was the one making the mess. I watched as Richard walked to the door, hesitating. He checked the peephole. I saw him recoil as if he'd been shot. He turned back to Jessica, his face a mask of pure terror. He mouthed one word that I could read perfectly even from 2 miles away. David. I took another sip of coffee. It was cold now, but suddenly, it tasted sweet. To understand why I was sitting in that coffee shop with a heart full of ice, you have to understand who we were. Or rather, who Richard wanted everyone to think we were. We live in a suburb just outside of Milwaukee, in a colonial-style house that is too big for 2 people but perfect for Richard's ego. Richard is the regional sales director for a medical supply company. He is handsome in that silver fox way that middle-aged men get to be, tall, full head of graying hair, a smile that crinkles at the eyes just enough to make you trust him. I am a forensic accountant. When people ask what I do, Richard usually jumps in and says, "She does taxes," before steering the conversation back to his golf handicap or his quarterly bonuses. He thinks my job is boring. He thinks I sit in a dusty room with a calculator and a visor. He has no idea. My job is to find the truth buried under layers of lies. I look for embezzlements, hidden assets, money laundering, and insurance fraud. I spend my days analyzing spreadsheets that don't add up, tracking digital footprints that people think they've erased, and finding the one receipt in a box of 1,000 that proves a CEO is stealing from his employees' pension fund. I see patterns. That is my gift and my curse. I notice when things don't fit. For a long time, I chose not to see the patterns in my own marriage. We had been married for 25 years. We met in college. I was the studious one, he was the life of the party. It's a cliché, I know. Opposites attract. I provided the stability, he provided the excitement. It worked for a while. I handled the bills, the investments, the mortgage, the planning. Richard handled the social calendar, the dinner parties, the charm. But over the last 5 years, the dynamic shifted. Richard started making more money, or at least, he started spending like he was making more money. He leased a luxury Lexus. He joined a private country club that cost more than my first car. He started buying custom suits. And he started treating me like an accessory that had gone out of style. It wasn't abusive. It was subtler than that. It was a slow, grinding erosion of my value. He would interrupt me at dinner parties. He would roll his eyes when I talked about a book I was reading. He stopped asking about my day. The breaking point, or at least, the first crack in the foundation, happened 2 months ago, on our 25th anniversary. I had planned a quiet dinner at our favorite Italian restaurant. Richard came home late, smelling of expensive scotch and something floral that wasn't me. He handed me a gift bag. "Happy anniversary, babe," he said, loosening his tie. "Sorry I'm late. Clients. You know how it is." I opened the bag. It was a scarf. A silk scarf with a chaotic, colorful pattern. It was nice. but as I unfolded it, my fingers brushed against the tag. It was a generic brand. And then I noticed the box it came in was plain white, not the signature orange of the brand he usually bragged about buying. But here is the thing, I recognized the scarf. I had seen an ad for a luxury handbag promotion the week before. If you bought the $3,000 at Bag of the Season, you got this specific silk scarf as a free gift with purchase. Richard hadn't gone shopping for me. He had gone shopping for someone else. He had bought someone a $3,000 handbag, and he had given his wife of 25 years the free promotional item that came with it. I looked at him. He was checking his watch, already mentally checked out. "Do you like it?" he asked, not really caring about the answer. "It's lovely," I said. My voice was calm. My face was neutral. But inside, the accountant in me had just opened a new file. Subject, Richard. Case, betrayal. I didn't confront him then. Confrontation without evidence is just emotional noise. And as I said, I deal in facts. I started watching. I started noticing the late nights were becoming more frequent. The business trips were happening on weekends. The withdrawals from our joint checking account were small enough to go unnoticed by a regular person, $200 here, $300 there, labeled as cash or miscellaneous. But the biggest red flag wasn't the money. It was the attitude. He was smug. He walked around our house like he had a secret that made him better than me. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and boredom. He thought I was stupid. That is the mistake arrogant men always make. They mistake silence for ignorance. They mistake kindness for weakness. I kept wearing the scarf. I wore it to dinner. I wore it when we went to church. I wore it every time he looked at me, a silent reminder that I knew something was wrong, even if I didn't have the full picture yet. And then there was the lake house. The house had belonged to my grandmother. She left it to me, specifically to me, not us, in her will 10 years ago. It was a beautiful A-frame on the quiet side of the lake, surrounded by pines. It was my sanctuary. Richard hated it. He called it rustic in a tone that meant dump. He hated that the cell reception was spotty. He hated that it was an hour-and-a-half drive from the city. He hated that it was mine. So when he started volunteering to go up there to check on the roof or meet the landscapers, I should have known. "You don't need to drive all the way up there, Sarah," he would say. "I'll swing by on my way back from Madison. Save you the trip." I thought he was trying to be helpful. I thought maybe, just maybe, he was trying to reconnect with me by taking care of something I loved. God, I was naive. He wasn't taking care of it. He was scouting it. He was turning my sanctuary into a love nest. And he wasn't doing it alone. Let's talk about Jessica. Jessica is my half-sister. My father remarried after my mother passed away when I was in college. Jessica came along a few years later. We have different mothers, different generations, and frankly, different moral compasses. I love her. Or I did. I tried to be the good big sister. When our father died 5 years ago, Jessica fell apart. She has always been fragile, the kind of person who feels everything too deeply and acts on impulse. She bounces from career to career, yoga instructor, life coach, jewelry maker, and now, interior designer. She is married to David, a salt-of-the-earth guy who loves her desperately and blinds himself to her faults. David works himself into the ground to fund Jessica's projects. She always needs startup capital. She always needs a new studio space. She always needs a vacation to recenter herself. And who does she come to when David says they can't afford it? Me. "Sarah, please," she would say, widening those big, teary eyes. "It's just a loan. I have this amazing vision for a sustainable furniture line. I just need $5,000 for materials. I'll pay you back next month." I always wrote the check. I always knew I wouldn't see the money again. Richard used to complain about it. She's a leech, Sarah, he would say. You're enabling her. Ironically, he was right. But not for the reasons he pretended to care about. About 6 months ago, Jessica started showing a sudden interest in the lake house. I need a place to focus, she told me over lunch, picking at a kale salad she insisted on ordering but didn't eat. The city is so loud. David is always stressing about money. It kills my creativity. Can I just go up to the lake for a few weekends? Maybe do some sketches? I could even give you some design ideas for the living room. I hesitated. The lake house was my private retreat. But she looked so stressed. Her marriage with David was rocky, she complained he was boring and obsessed with work. I thought giving her some space might help her save her marriage. Sure, I said. Just keep it clean. And don't mess with the thermostat. You're the best sister ever, she squealed, hugging me. Looking back, I want to shake myself. I handed her the keys to the castle. It started innocently enough. She would go up on a Thursday and come back Saturday. She would send me photos of the sunset or a deer in the yard. So peaceful, she would text. Then, the withdrawals from our joint account started getting weird labels. Lake house maintenance. Plumbing repair, lake. I asked Richard about them. Oh, yeah, he said, not looking up from his phone. Jessica called me. Said the sink was leaking. I told her to call a plumber and put it on my card. Didn't want to bother you with it. Since when do you talk to Jessica? I asked. Richard had always found her annoying. She called the house line, he shrugged. I just handled it. Trying to be a good brother-in-law. A good brother-in-law. The pattern started to form in my head. Jessica goes to the lake on Thursdays. Richard has late client dinners on Thursdays. Jessica needs money for design supplies. Richard withdraws cash for incidentals. Jessica starts dressing better. New shoes. New bags. A scarf that matches the one I have in my drawer. But I denied it. I refused to believe it. Not Jessica. She was messy, yes. She was selfish, yes. But she was family. She was the baby sister I bought ice cream for. She wouldn't sleep with my husband. And Richard? He was vain, but he wasn't a monster. He wouldn't touch my sister. That is a line you don't cross. That is Greek tragedy level betrayal. The denial shattered 2 weeks ago. I was at my office, working on a fraud case for a mid-sized construction company. I needed to verify an asset, so I logged into the state's property tax portal. While I was there, I decided to check the lake house assessment, just out of habit. I pulled up the record. There was a pending inquiry on the title. My heart stopped. A title inquiry usually means someone is preparing to sell or transfer a property. I called the county clerk immediately. Hi, this is Sarah Miller. I own the property at 450 Pineview. I see a flag on the file. Oh, yes, Mrs. Miller, the clerk said cheerfully. Your husband, Mr. Miller, called last week requesting a copy of the deed and asking about the process for adding a spouse to the title. He said you two were restructuring your assets? I felt the blood drain from my face. Restructuring. Right. Did he ask anything else? He asked for a rush on the paperwork. Said he wanted to get it listed by the end of the month. Listed. He wasn't just cheating on me. He was planning to sell my grandmother's house. My inheritance. The one thing that was legally, solely mine. I hung up the phone. My hands were trembling, but my mind was crystal clear. He couldn't sell it without my signature. But if he tricked me into adding him to the deed, maybe buried in a stack of tax documents or refinancing papers, he could force a sale. Or, in a divorce, he could claim half the value. He was setting up his exit strategy. And he was going to use my money to fund it. And Jessica? Was she part of this? Or was she just the fun distraction? I needed to know. I needed proof. Hard, undeniable, court-admissible proof. I left work early that day. I drove to a spy shop in the city. Yes, they exist, and they do brisk business with suspicious wives. I bought 3 high-definition cameras disguised as smoke detectors and a GPS tracker for a car. I drove home. Richard's Lexus was in the driveway. I used my spare key and slipped the GPS tracker into the wheel well lining of his back tire. It magnetically attached with a satisfying clack. Then I waited. For 3 days, I watched the dot on my phone move. Work. Golf course. Home. Then came Monday. I have to go to Chicago tomorrow, Richard announced over dinner. Regional conference. Big presentation. I'll be gone until Thursday. Okay, I said, cutting my chicken. Where are you staying? The Palmer House, he said. It's going to be intense. Back-to-back meetings. I probably won't be able to talk much. Good luck, I said. Knock 'em dead. Tuesday morning, today, he kissed me goodbye. He packed his business suit. He looked me in the eye and said, I love you, Sarah. Hold down the fort. I watched him back out of the driveway. I waited 10 minutes. Then I opened the tracking app. He drove south toward the highway. But he didn't take the exit for Chicago. He kept going. He took the exit for the lake. My phone pinged. A text from Jessica. Hey sis. Just wanted to let you know I'm heading up to the lake for a few days of me time. Need to clear my head. Love you. Me time. I grabbed my purse, my iPad, and my keys. I didn't go to the house. I knew if I walked in there, I might do something that would land me in jail. And I didn't want to go to jail. I wanted to win. I drove to the Bean and Leaf coffee shop. I set up my command center. And that brings us back to the coffee shop. To David. To the appraisal. I need to tell you about the week leading up to this moment, specifically the cameras. After the call with the county clerk, I knew Richard was plotting to take the house. But I needed to know the extent of Jessica's involvement. Was she being used? Was she a victim of his charm too? Last Thursday, I knew Richard was at his poker night, which I now suspected was just him sitting in his car talking to her. Jessica was at her yoga class. I drove up to the lake house alone at 10 p.m. I parked down the road and walked through the woods so no neighbors would see my car. The house was dark. It smelled like them. That was the first thing that hit me. It didn't smell like pine and old books anymore. It smelled of Richard's cologne and Jessica's vanilla vape smoke. I walked through the living room. There were wine rings on the table. A throw pillow was on the floor. I got to work. I replaced the smoke detector in the living room with the camera unit. It has a 180-degree view and a microphone sensitive enough to pick up a whisper. I put another one in the kitchen. And then I went to the master bedroom. My grandmother's quilt was folded in the corner. The bed was made with sheets I didn't recognize. Silk sheets. Black. Tackier than hell. I installed the third camera directly above the bed. I felt sick doing it. I felt like a voyeur in my own home. But I forced myself to think like an accountant. This is an audit. This is data collection. I drove home that night and slept in the guest room, telling Richard the first had a migraine. The next day, I tested the feeds. The audio was perfect. And that's how I heard the conversation that killed the last shred of love I had for my sister. It was Saturday. Richard and Jessica were at the house. I told Richard the first was visiting my aunt. He told me he was golfing. I listened on my headphones while gardening in my backyard. Audio feed, living room, Jessica, but when can we sell it? I'm tired of sneaking around, Richie. I want to buy that loft downtown. The one with the skylights. Richard, soon, babe. I got the deed info. I just need to get Sarah to sign the transfer papers. I'm going to tell her it's for tax protection. She trusts me with the legal stuff. She's good with numbers, but she's naive about property law. Jessica, laughing, she is so gullible. She literally thinks I'm up here finding myself. God, she's pathetic. Do you know she loaned me another $1,000 last week? I used it to buy this lingerie. Richard, you're bad. I love it. Jessica, but seriously, if we sell this place, we get what? 500,000? Richard, at least. The market is hot. We take the 500,000, I divorce her, give her the suburban house, she loves that boring colonial anyway, and we start fresh. Aruba. Or maybe Florida. Jessica, I don't care where, as long as I don't have to listen to her lecture me about financial responsibility anymore. She acts like she's my mother. Richard, she's old news, baby. You're the future. I took the headphones off. I sat in my garden, surrounded by the hydrangeas I had planted, and I didn't cry. They weren't just having an affair. They were laughing at me. Jessica, who I had bailed out of debt 3 times. Richard, who I had supported when he was unemployed for a year in 2008. They called me pathetic. Gullible. That was the moment the sadness evaporated. Rage is a hot fire, but cold fury? Cold fury is a laser. It cuts through everything. I realized I didn't just want to divorce Richard. I didn't just want to cut Jessica off. I wanted to humiliate them. I wanted to blow up their fantasy so thoroughly that they would never be able to look at each other again without seeing the debris. And I knew exactly who the detonator should be. David. David, the honest, hard-working appraiser who adored Jessica. David, who Richard had called a dull tool at Thanksgiving dinner last year. I formulated the plan on Monday. I waited for Richard to leave for Chicago. I waited for the GPS to confirm he was at the lake. Then I picked up the phone. Calling David was the hardest part. Not because I was afraid, but because I knew I was about to break his heart. I was about to use him as a weapon. I dialed his number at 9 a.m. on Tuesday. Eagle Eye Appraisals, this is David, he answered on the second ring. He sounded out of breath, like he was climbing a ladder. Hi David, it's Sarah. Sarah Miller. Oh. Hi Sarah, his voice brightened. Is everything okay? Is Jessica all right? The concern in his voice made my chest ache. He assumed I was calling about his wife because she was usually the source of any crisis. Jessica is fine, David. Actually, I'm calling you on a business matter. Strictly professional. Oh. Okay. What can I do for you? I'm in a bit of a bind, I lied smoothly. I'm refinancing the lake house. There's a financial opportunity that came up, and I need to access the equity immediately. The bank needs a certified appraisal by end of day today. Today? David exhaled. Sarah, I'm slammed. I've got 2 inspections in Milwaukee and a report due for a commercial site. Can it wait until Friday? It can't, I said, injecting a note of desperation into my voice. The rate lock expires tomorrow morning. If I don't get this appraisal, I lose a significant amount of money. Richard is counting on this. I knew mentioning Richard would trigger him. David always felt inferior to Richard's financial success. I really want to help, Sarah, but the drive alone is 3 hours round trip. I'll pay a rush fee, I said. Triple your normal rate. Cash. And I'll cover your gas. There was a silence on the line. I knew David. He needed the money. Jessica's spending habits kept them living paycheck to paycheck despite how hard he worked. Triple? He asked. Yes. I just need a full interior and exterior assessment. Verify the square footage, check the foundation, recent upgrades. You know the drill. Does Richard know I'm coming? He asked. Richard is in Chicago for a conference, I said. The house is empty. I'll text you the door code. You'll have the place to yourself. It should be a quick job. Okay, he sighed. For you, Sarah. I'll move my 2 p.m. appointment. I can be there around 2. Thank you, David. You're a lifesaver. Truly. No problem. I'll get the report to you by tonight. Just one thing, David, I added. Be thorough. Check everything. The master bedroom, the closets, the basement. The bank is being very particular about structural integrity. I'm always thorough, Sarah, he said with a hint of pride. I know you are. That's why I hired you. I hung up. My hands were shaking again. I had just sent a good man into an ambush. But it was necessary. If I had just told him, David, your wife is sleeping with my husband, he might not have believed me. Or he might have called Jessica first to confront her, giving them time to come up with a lie. Oh, we were just meeting to discuss a surprise party for Sarah. No. He needed to see it. He needed to walk in on it. He needed the shock to cauterize the wound immediately so he wouldn't go back to her. I sat in the coffee shop and waited. At 1:30 p.m., the GPS tracker on Richard's car showed him firmly parked at the lake house. At 1:45 p.m., I saw the Eagle Eye truck moving on the map, approaching the turnoff. I opened the camera app. Richard and Jessica were in the living room. They had just finished a lunch of takeout sushi, which, I noted with annoyance, they ate directly off my coffee table without plates. They were relaxed. Happy. Richard was telling a story about a client he duped into buying an expensive package. Jessica was giggling, tracing a pattern on his knee. You're so bad, she purred. I'm smart, he corrected. There's a difference. I love that you take what you want, she said. I stared at the screen. He's taking what's mine, Jessica. And so are you. Then, the truck pulled in. We are back at the moment of impact. The doorbell rang. Inside the house, the atmosphere shifted from romance to panic in a nanosecond. Who is that? Jessica hissed, scrambling off the couch. She looked around wildly, like a trapped animal. Did you order anything? No. Richard whispered harshly. Be quiet. He crept to the peephole. I watched his back muscles tense through the silk robe. He turned around, his face pale gray. It's David. What? Jessica shrieked, but it was a whispered shriek. Why is he here? Did you tell him? Why the hell would I tell him? Richard snapped. He thinks I'm in Chicago. He thinks where does he think you are? Yoga. Jessica cried, grabbing her purse and looking for a place to hide. He thinks I'm at a retreat. The doorbell rang again. Longer this time. Impatient. Eagle Eye Appraisals. David's voice came through the door, muffled but clear on my audio feed. Hello? Is anyone home? It's David. Richard looked at Jessica. He has a key? Does he have a key? I don't know. Sarah gave me a key. Hide, Richard commanded. Go to the bedroom. Lock the door. I'll get rid of him. In this? Jessica gestured to her t-shirt and bare legs. Just go. Jessica ran toward the hallway leading to the bedrooms. Richard took a deep breath, ran a hand through his hair, and tightened the belt of his robe. He was trying to summon his sales director persona. He was trying to put on the mask. But he opened the door too late. David had typed in the code I gave him. The electronic lock beeped. Beep. 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 Whir. The door swung open. David stepped in, looking down at his clipboard. Sarah, I'm letting myself in, hope that's, he looked up. He stopped. There was Richard. In my living room. In a robe. At 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. The silence was absolute. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the pounding of my own heart in the coffee shop. David blinked. He looked at Richard. He looked at the wine glasses on the table. He looked at the sushi wrappers. He looked at the woman's purse on the armchair, Jessica's bright yellow purse that he had probably bought for her. "Richard?" David said. His voice wasn't angry yet. It was confused. "I thought. Sarah said you were in Chicago." Richard put on a smile. It was a terrible, shaky smile. "David. Hey. What a surprise. The conference got cancelled. Last minute. Came up here to check the flashing on the chimney. You know how Sarah worries." "You're checking the chimney in a silk robe?" David asked. He stepped fully into the house and let the door close behind him. "I just got out of the shower," Richard lied. "What are you doing here?" "Sarah hired me," David said slowly, his eyes scanning the room. He was putting it together. He was slow to anger, but he wasn't stupid. "She hired me for an urgent appraisal. She said the house was empty." "Appraisal?" Richard laughed nervously. "That's crazy. She didn't tell me." "She must be confused. We don't need an appraisal. You can go, Dave." "Billing error." "I'll handle it." David didn't move. He was looking at the floor near the sofa. I zoomed in on the camera feed. There, peeking out from under the coffee table, was one of Jessica's sandals. David recognized it. I saw his jaw tighten. I saw the grip on his clipboard turn white. "Is Sarah here?" David asked, his voice dropping an octave. No, Richard said, stepping sideways to block David's view of the hallway. "Just me. Just a solo trip." David took a step forward. He was shorter than Richard, but thicker. Stronger. "Then whose purse is that, Richard?" Richard looked at the yellow purse. He was trapped. "It's Sarah's. She left it last time." "Sarah doesn't carry yellow," David said. "Jessica carries yellow." "David, look, you're imagining things," Richard said, putting a hand up. "You need to leave." "This is my property, it's Sarah's property," David corrected. "And I have a work order." David didn't yell. He didn't punch Richard. He did something so much better. He lifted his camera. The big DSLR he used for inspections. Click. He took a photo of Richard in the robe. Click. He took a photo of the wine glasses. Click. He took a photo of the yellow purse. "What are you doing?" Richard shouted, lunging for the camera. David stiff-armed him. "Documenting the site conditions. Standard procedure." Then David walked toward the hallway. "You can't go back there," Richard yelled. "David, stop. I'm warning you." David ignored him. He walked to the master bedroom door. It was locked. "Jessica?" David said through the door. His voice broke slightly. "I know you're in there." Silence. "Jessica, open the door or I'm kicking it in. And then I'm noting damaged door frame on the report." A moment later, the lock clicked. The door opened. Jessica stood there. She was crying. Mascara running down her face. "Davy," she whimpered. "It's not what it looks like." "Really?" David looked at her. He looked at the unmade bed behind her, my bed. He looked at the black silk sheets. He raised the camera. Click. A photo of his wife, disheveled, in her sister's house, with her brother-in-law. "David, please," Jessica sobbed, reaching for him. "We were just talking. I was lonely." David stepped back, avoiding her touch like she was radioactive. He looked at Richard, who was leaning against the doorframe looking defeated and pathetic. "You said you were at a yoga retreat," David said to Jessica. "I took an extra shift this weekend to pay for it." "I'm sorry," Jessica wailed. "And you," David turned to Richard. "You called me a loser last Thanksgiving because I drive a truck." Richard didn't say anything. David looked down at his clipboard. He took a pen from his pocket. He wrote something down. "Well," David said, his voice trembling with a mixture of rage and grief. "Inspection complete. Occupancy load exceeded. Pest infestation noted." He turned around and walked out. He didn't look back. He walked past Richard, past the sushi, out the front door. I watched him get into his truck on the exterior camera. He sat there for a minute. I saw him put his head on the steering wheel. I saw his shoulders shake. My heart broke for him. But I knew this was the only way. Inside the house, Richard and Jessica were screaming at each other. "You idiot. You left the purse out. You said he was in Milwaukee." I closed the iPad cover. My hand was shaking, but I felt a strange sense of calm settling over me. The bomb had been detonated. The debris was flying. Now, it was time for the fallout. I picked up my phone. I had one more call to make. Not to David. Not to Richard. I called my lawyer. "Hi, Mark," I said. "I'm ready to file. And I have the evidence. All of it." But I wasn't done yet. The inspection was just the beginning. I had the photos, but I needed to secure the assets. Because what they didn't know, what even David didn't know yet, was that Richard hadn't just stolen my trust. He had stolen money. A lot of it. And I was going to get every single cent back. I didn't go home after the inspection. I couldn't. The thought of seeing Richard walk through the door, pretending he had just driven back from a grueling conference in Chicago, made my skin crawl. I needed to solidify my position. I needed to secure my greatest asset in this war, David. I texted him 10 minutes after he drove away from the lake house. "Meet me at the Boathouse Bar and Grill." 30 minutes. I know everything. I watched his truck pull into the gravel lot of the dive bar 30 minutes later. He looked like a man who had aged 10 years in the span of an hour. He didn't even park straight, his tire was over the line, something the old David, the meticulous appraiser, would never have done. I was waiting at a picnic table near the water, 2 beers already open. It was windy, the kind of wind that whips your hair across your face and stings your eyes, but it felt appropriate. David walked over. He didn't sit down immediately. He just stood there, clutching his clipboard like a shield. His eyes were red. "You knew," he said. His voice was rough, like gravel in a mixer. "You sent me there on purpose." I didn't flinch. "Sit down, David. You used me, Sarah. You made me walk in on my wife and your husband in." He choked on the words, looking out at the gray water. "In that robe. My God." "I did," I admitted calmly. "And I'm sorry for the pain it caused. But I couldn't just tell you. You wouldn't have believed me. You would have called her. She would have lied. She would have said I was jealous, or crazy, or seeing things. You needed to see the sandals. You needed to see the sushi wrappers." He slumped onto the bench opposite me. He put his head in his hands. "She said she was at a yoga retreat. I picked up extra shifts inspecting foreclosure properties in the bad part of town to pay for it. I worried about her driving alone." I slid a manila envelope across the weathered wood of the table. "Drink the beer, David. And then look at this." He looked at the envelope warily. "What is this? More photos?" "No. This is math. I told you, I deal in numbers." He opened it. It was a printout of a bank statement from a shell company called Lakeside Interiors LLC. I did some digging while you were driving over here, I said. Forensic accounting is amazing when you know where to look. Richard has been paying consulting fees to this LLC for 6 months. $5,000 a month. David squinted at the paper. Jessica doesn't have an LLC. She does now. Look at the registered address. David's face went white. That's my parents' old address. The rental property. Exactly. They are funneling money from our joint accounts into this shell company. But here is the part that concerns you, David. Look at the last page. He flipped the page. It was a credit report inquiry and a loan application. Jessica forged your signature on a home equity line of credit application for your house, I said softly. She's trying to pull $50,000 of equity out of your home. The bank called Richard's work number for verification because she listed him as her employer. David stared at the signature. It was a shaky approximation of his own. She stole my house, he whispered. I built that deck. I refinished those floors myself. She's stealing your future, David. Just like Richard is trying to steal mine. They aren't just cheating on us. They are liquidating us. They are cashing us out so they can run away together. David crushed the beer can in his hand. The aluminum crumpled with a sharp crack. The sadness in his eyes was gone, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. It was the look of a man who realizes his loyalty was the very weapon used against him. What do you want me to do? He asked. I don't want you to confront her yet, I said. If you go home and scream at her, she'll panic. She'll call Richard. They'll hide the money. They'll destroy the paper trail. We need to catch them in a lie so big they can't climb out of it. I can't go home and sleep next to her, Sarah. I can't. You don't have to. Tell her you're staying at the site of a commercial inspection overnight. Tell her you have a deadline. Just buy me 72 hours. For what? For the party, I smiled. A cold, accountant smile. I'm hosting a dinner party this Sunday. An end-of-summer celebration. I'm going to invite Richard, Jessica, and you. You want to have dinner with them? He looked at me like I was insane. I want to serve them their own destruction on a silver platter. And I need you to bring something for me. What? The appraisal report. The real one. With the photos you took today. David looked down at his camera bag. He nodded slowly. I'll do it. I'll write the most detailed report of my life. I'll note every crack in the foundation. Good, I said. We're partners now, David. Structural integrity matters. And we're going to bring the whole house down on their heads. The next 3 days were a masterclass in compartmentalization. Richard came home Tuesday night, acting exhausted. He tossed his suit jacket on the chair and rubbed his temples. God, Chicago was brutal, he lied, kissing my cheek. He smelled of soap, hotel soap. He had showered at the lake house to wash off Jessica's perfume, but he forgot that I buy a specific brand of organic body wash for that house. He smelled like my lavender and eucalyptus. Did the presentation go well? I asked, stirring a pot of soup. Killed it, he said. The client was tough, but you know me. I sure do, I said. I waited until he was asleep that night. Then I went to my home office and logged into everything. You see, Richard thought he was smart. He changed his email password. He changed his phone passcode. But he forgot that we file joint tax returns. He forgot that as a CPA, I have power of attorney for our financial dealings. And he forgot that 3 years ago, I synced our cloud storage for family photo sharing. I didn't look for photos. I looked for the backups. I found his drafts folder in his email. Men like Richard are arrogant. They don't delete things, they save them because they like to reread their own genius. I found an email thread with a realtor in Florida. Subject: Condo viewing to sunshinerealty@mail.com from r.millersales@workmail.com. Hi Greg, my partner and I are looking to move fast. We will have approximately $600,000 cash available by the end of the month. We need a place with ocean views. No kids, just us. Privacy is key. 600,000. My stomach churned. The lake house was worth about $450. Where was the other $150 coming from? I started digging into his 401k withdrawals. Nothing there. Our savings? Intact. Then I looked at his work accounts. Or rather, the commission statements he thought were hidden. Richard works on commission. He gets a percentage of every medical device contract he sells. But I noticed a discrepancy in his deposit history. May, $12,000 commission deposited. June, $8,000. July, $4,000. His deposits were shrinking. But he was buying expensive suits and dinners. I accessed the bank statements of the joint account again, looking deeper. I cross-referenced his business trips with the credit card statements. And then I found it. The smoking gun. It wasn't just the affair. It was embezzlement. Richard wasn't just stealing from me. He was stealing from his company. He had set up a dummy vendor account in the system, JM Logistics. He was approving invoices for shipping and handling on his own contracts. JM. Jessica Marie. He was funneling company money into Jessica's account, and then she was transferring a portion of it back to a crypto wallet he controlled. I sat back in my chair, the glow of the monitor illuminating the dark room. This was a felony. This was wire fraud. This was money laundering. If I divorced him, he would just fight me for half the assets. But if I turned him in? The assets would be frozen. He would be fired. He would go to prison. And under the innocent spouse rule in tax law, which I know intimately, if I could prove I didn't know about the fraud and turned him in, I could protect my own assets while his were seized to pay restitution. I printed every single page. The printer hummed rhythmically, a sound like a heartbeat. Thump thump. Thump thump. I had him. I had him dead to rights. But there was one loose end. One person who could ruin my plan if she tipped him off. My mother. My mother has always been difficult. She favored Jessica. Jessica was the baby, the wild one, the one who needed protection. I was Sarah the steady. Sarah the boring. Sarah who didn't need help because she had a job and a husband. On Thursday morning, 2 days before the party, my mother called me. Sarah, she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. I was just talking to Richard. He sounds so stressed, poor thing. Does he? I asked, typing away at my resignation letter for the good wife role. Yes. He mentioned you two were thinking of selling the lake house. I think it's a marvelous idea. I stopped typing. I never said we were selling the lake house, Mom. That was Grandma's house. She left it to me. Well, yes, but Richard says the market is peaking. And honestly, Sarah, do you really use it? Jessica mentioned it's getting run down. It might be better to sell it and give the money to, well, invest it in the family. Invest in the family? I repeated. You mean give it to Jessica? She's struggling, Sarah. She has such big dreams. And Richard. Richard is trying so hard to take care of everyone. You should support him. A wife should support her husband's vision. Something clicked. Mom, I asked, my voice trembling slightly. How often do you talk to Richard? Oh, now and then. He checks on me. He's a good son-in-law. Better than you treat him, sometimes. Did he tell you he was in Chicago this week? Of course. He called me from the hotel. No, he didn't, Mom. He called you from the lake house. while he was sleeping with Jessica. Silence. Dead silence on the line. Mom? Don't be ridiculous, Sarah, she snapped, but her voice lacked conviction. You're being paranoid. You've always been jealous of Jessica. I have the logs, Mom. I have the phone records. He calls you, then he calls her. You knew. You knew they were together. They are just friends, she stammered. They bond over helping the family. Richard pays my car insurance, Sarah. He helps me with the bills. You never help me. I pay your mortgage, Mom. I screamed. It was the first time I had raised my voice in 20 years. I pay your damn mortgage every month. It's not enough, she shrieked back. Richard understands me. He said if the house sells, he'd buy me a condo in Florida near them. Near the grandbabies they'd have. Grandbabies. She was willing to help my husband sell my inheritance, divorce me, and marry my sister so she could get a condo in Florida. My own mother. I felt a tear slide down my cheek, hot and fast. But when it hit my lip, I tasted salt, and I realized it wasn't sadness. It was the toxic sludge of a lifetime of being the good one finally leaving my body. Okay, Mom, I said softly. Okay? So you'll sign the papers? I'll see you on Sunday, Mom. Come to the lake house. We're having a party. Richard's big announcement. You won't want to miss it. Oh. Wonderful. I knew you'd come around. I'll wear my blue dress. Wear whatever you want, I said. Just make sure it's comfortable. It's going to be a long night. I hung up. And then I blocked her number. I sat in my kitchen, the silence ringing in my ears. I was an orphan now. Not legally, but spiritually. My husband, my sister, my mother. They were all gone. But I wasn't alone. I had David. And I had the truth. I looked at the stack of documents on the table. The appraisal from David. The financial audit from me. I picked up my phone and texted David. She knew. My mother knew. She's coming to the party. David replied instantly. Then we set a place for her at the table. Let's burn it all down, Sarah. Friday night. The setup. Richard came home early, whistling. He thought he was winning. He thought I was beaten. Hey hon, he said, grabbing a beer. So, about Sunday. I was thinking, why don't we invite your mom? And maybe Jessica and David? A real family get-together. I have a proposal I want to make about our future. He was doing my work for me. That sounds perfect, Richard, I said, smiling over my coffee cup. Actually, I already texted them. Everyone is coming. Even Mom. Great. He looked relieved. And, listen, Sarah. I know I've been distant. But after this weekend, everything is going to change. I promise. I know it is, I said. I can feel it. He didn't notice the double meaning. Narcissists never hear the subtext, they only hear the applause they think they deserve. Saturday was the preparation. I went to the grocery store. I bought steaks. I bought expensive wine, cases of it. I bought fresh flowers. If I was going to execute them socially and legally, I was going to do it with impeccable hospitality. I drove up to the lake house early Sunday morning to prep. Richard said he would drive up separately with the drinks and ice, which meant he wanted to stop and call Jessica. When I got to the house, I didn't clean. I left the wine rings on the table. I left the sushi wrapper I had fished out of the trash, I put it right back on the counter. I set up the dining room table. 5 settings. Me at the head. Richard at the other head. Jessica and my mother on one side. David on the other. I placed a projector on the sidebar, pointing it at the blank white wall opposite the table. Just for a slideshow of memories, I whispered to the empty room. At 4 p.m., David arrived. He looked clean-shaven, wearing a suit. He looked like an executioner dressed for church. "Ready?" he asked, handing me a thick binder. "Ready," I said. We hid his truck in the neighbor's barn. I had bribed the neighbor with a bottle of scotch. David waited in the guest room upstairs. He was the surprise witness. At 5 p.m., Richard arrived. At 5:15 p.m., Jessica and my mother arrived together. The players were on the stage. The atmosphere was electric, but only I could feel the current. To everyone else, it was a humid Sunday evening. Jessica wore a white sundress. She looked radiant, flush with the secret she thought she was keeping. She hugged Richard a little too long when she walked in. "Hi Sarah," she chirped, giving me a fake air kiss. "House looks cozy. A bit dusty, though." "I haven't had much time to clean," I said. "Been busy with work audits." She didn't flinch. "Boring," she muttered under her breath. My mother was fluttering around Richard, patting his arm. "Oh, Richard, you look so tired. Sarah, get him a drink. Don't just stand there." "I'll get it," Richard said magnanimously. "Champagne for everyone. We're celebrating." We sat down. The appetizers were shrimp cocktail, Richard's favorite. So, Richard started, standing up and tapping his glass with a fork. Clink, clink, clink. "I wanted to get us all together because, well, life is short. And we need to make bold moves." He looked at me. "Sarah and I have been talking, well, I've been thinking, about selling this place." "What?" Jessica feigned surprise. "Really? But Sarah loves this old shack." "It's an asset," Richard said smoothly. "And sitting on assets is a waste. We have an offer. A cash offer. From a developer." He was lying. The developer was the shell company he was funding with stolen money. He was going to buy it from himself using my money, then flip it. "Mom thinks it's a great idea," Richard added. "I do." Mom chimed in. "Sarah, let it go. It's too much work for you. Let Richard handle the finances. He's the businessman." "Where is David?" Jessica asked suddenly, looking around. "He said he was working late, but I thought you invited him?" "He's coming," I said, taking a sip of my wine. "He had a very important job to finish. A comprehensive appraisal." Jessica froze. "Appraisal?" "Yes," I said. "I hired an appraiser last week. Just to be sure we knew the value before we sold." "Richard, didn't I tell you?" Richard looked confused. "No." "Who did you hire?" "Me," a voice said from the hallway. Everyone turned. David walked in. He walked slowly, his footsteps heavy on the hardwood floor. He didn't look at Jessica. He stared straight at Richard. "David?" Jessica squeaked. "What are you doing here?" "I'm here to deliver the report," David said. He walked to the table and slammed the binder down in front of Richard. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "What is this?" Richard demanded, his bravado slipping. "Open it," I said. Richard opened the binder. The first photo wasn't of the roof. Or the foundation. It was the photo of Richard in his blue silk robe, standing in this very room, looking terrified. The timestamp was printed in bold red ink, Tuesday 2:05 p.m. Richard went pale. He slammed the binder shut. This is a joke," he stammered. "Keep looking," David said. Page 2. Richard didn't move. So I reached over and flipped the page for him. Page 2, Jessica's yellow purse on the chair. Page 3, Jessica cowering in the hallway, half-dressed. Page 4, the unmade bed with black sheets. "Mom?" Jessica whispered, looking at our mother. Mom, make them stop. My mother was staring at the photos, her mouth open. Sarah, this is tasteless. Why would you? Shut up, Mom, I said. I didn't yell. I just said it. Look at page 5. Page 5 wasn't a photo. It was a spreadsheet. That, I pointed, is the ledger from JM Logistics. The company Richard uses to steal from his employer. Richard stood up, knocking his chair over. You hacked my computer. That's illegal. I'll sue you. Actually, I said, standing up to meet him. I audited our joint tax return. Which is my job. And my legal right. I picked up a remote control. But photos are small. Let's look at the big picture. I pressed the button. The projector whirred to life. On the wall, 10 feet tall, was the text exchange between Richard and Jessica. Richard, she's so gullible. We take the $500,000 and run. Jessica, I can't wait to never see her boring face again. The room was silent. Deadly silent. You called me boring, I said to Jessica. You called me gullible. Jessica was shaking. Sarah, we were just venting. It didn't mean anything. And you, I turned to Richard. You stole from your pension fund? Do you know that's a federal crime? I can put it back. Richard yelled. It was a loan. I was going to put it back after we sold the house. With whose money? I asked. My inheritance? It's our money. Richard screamed. I earned it. I put up with you for 25 years. I deserve it. You deserve this, David said. David reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a manila envelope. He tossed it to Jessica. Divorce papers, David said. And an eviction notice. I sold the house this morning, Jess. I accepted an offer from an investor who wants to flip it fast. You have 48 hours to get your crap out. You sold our house? Jessica screamed. You can't do that. I can, David said calmly. Because you forged my signature on the loan documents, remember? I showed them to the bank. They were very eager to avoid a fraud lawsuit, so they let me fast-track the sale to cover the debt you racked up. Jessica looked at Richard. Do something. Richard looked at me. His eyes were darting around the room, looking for an exit. Sarah, baby, listen. We can work this out. It's a misunderstanding. I was confused. Midlife crisis. You know? I looked at him. The man I had loved. The man I had washed socks for. The man I had trusted. He looked small. Pathetic. A salesman with nothing left to sell. I'm not Sarah, your wife, I said. Not anymore. I pointed to the door. I'm Sarah, the witness for the prosecution. Blue lights flashed through the front window. I called the police an hour ago, I checked my watch. Regarding the embezzlement. Since your company is based in Chicago but you operate here, it's interstate wire fraud. The FBI is actually quite interested. Richard ran for the back door. But David was faster. He tackled him. They went down in a heap of limbs and broken appetizer plates. The front door burst open. Police! Stay where you are. My mother started screaming. Jessica was sobbing on the floor. Richard was being cuffed. I stood there, holding my glass of wine. I took a sip. It was an excellent vintage. The next few months were a blur of depositions, court dates, and paperwork. Richard pleaded guilty to avoid a 20-year sentence. He got 5 years in federal prison for wire fraud and embezzlement. He lost everything. His 401k was seized to pay restitution to his company. His Lexus was repossessed. Jessica didn't go to jail, but she lost her safety net. David divorced her. She got nothing, no alimony, no house, no furniture line. She moved to a small apartment in a bad part of town and got a job as a receptionist at a car wash. I hear she hates it. I haven't spoken to her. My mother tried to call me a few times. She sent cards. Family is forgiveness, she wrote. I returned them unopened. I kept paying her mortgage for 3 months, just enough time for her to find a smaller place, and then I cut the cord. I am not cruel, but I am not a doormat anymore. As for me? I kept the lake house. I didn't sell it. Instead, I renovated it. I hired a contractor to rip out the master bedroom. We tore it down to the studs. I burned the bed. I burned the sheets. I burned the rug. The contractor was David. We aren't together, not like that. Not yet. We are 2 people who survived a shipwreck, and we are helping each other build new boats. He is a good friend. We have dinner on Thursdays. We drink wine. We laugh. Last week, we were sitting on the new deck he built, a beautiful cedar wraparound porch overlooking the water. You know, David said, looking at the sunset. The appraisal was wrong. What do you mean? I asked, panicking slightly. Did you miss a calculation? No, he smiled. I undervalued the owner. I laughed. It felt good to laugh. It felt light. I looked out at the lake. The water was calm. The storm was over. My name is Sarah. I am 53 years old. I am single. I am a forensic accountant. And I know exactly what I am worth. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever had to audit your own life to find the truth, let me know in the comments. And remember, always check the receipts.